Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your hosts Edward McQueen and April Garner.
Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to today's broadcast. As usual, it's fitting for the community, and that's why we're here to serve it. I'm your host, Ed McQueen. Of course, you can see in the co-host, April Garner, live. So, April, we got to tackle this issue. If we don't catch it beforehand, the whole community is going to be in trouble. We're going to get left behind as usual. So we're talking about the housing crisis. We attended a very important event yesterday at our Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. It was part of the MLK celebration, birthday celebration. And this particular part took place at the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. At the chairperson of Reverend Jerry Falk, and everybody, I tell you, it was well coordinated. People did a fantastic job. But anyway, congratulations to them again. April, one of the more important topics, which is impacting everybody, I mean, we just can't seem to get up to resolve the issue very well, and that is a housing crisis. And at the same time, interest rates are keep going up on top of that. So yesterday, it was this interesting information that was carried out and dispensed to us by Reverend Tim McCray, and he's the faith-based and community coordinator for Minority Affairs. Right, he's based in Myrtle Beach. He has some statistics that we thought that everybody really needs to take heed to and hopefully serve as a spark to come as a group and assemble again to make some decisions. Okay, so April, we have Reverend Tim McCray with us, and he's going to give us a further elaboration on what he dispensed yesterday, and including today at the another economic summit today on Myrtle Beach this morning. So welcome to the program, Reverend McCray.
How y'all doing? Glad to be here. As I breathe, I hope. And so I'm excited to be here to talk to you guys today about this important matter in our community and here in South Carolina.
Well, we're certainly glad to have you. Of course, that communication is very, very important. So we want to have a recap of yesterday. And this morning, if there were some things this morning that you really wanted to say, it appears as though you wanted to bring them out this morning at this economic summit, and you didn't get that opportunity. I saw the expression on your face, so you're going to get that opportunity today, okay, this evening. All right?
Don't put me on the spot, please. Don't put me on the spot.
Hey, look, when you get on the spot, we're not going to put you on the spot, but the whole community is going to benefit. Okay, so we'll let you know that you're on the spot, but sometimes you got to make those sacrifices. Right. So let's start with a recap of first of all, if you want to introduce yourself more thoroughly to our audience, for those who don't know who you are, because this is worldwide.
Well, I'm some call me Tim, some call me Reverend, but depending on what matter. When God called me, he just called me Tim. But I'm Reverend Tim McCray with South Carolina Commission Minority Affairs. Community leader. I'm over the faith-based initiative and community engagement for South Carolina Commission Minority Affairs. We cover African American, Native American, Latino,
right.
age. So we're excited about what we're doing here in South Carolina.
Okay, all right. let's just start with the recap of yesterday. I thoroughly I was captured with all those statistics you brought out, and also out of the book that you kind of use the word propagate, the book that you showed us, and that you advised everybody on, and all those statistics that were there. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more? It's going to be, to our audience, it's going to be revealing. Okay, so there's some things there that hopefully you'll see that you could give you something to be informed of, and you can act upon, hopefully, and get make an informed decision regarding your securing housing as a group or as an individual. So go ahead. So Reverend McCray.
Well, I thank you again. Thank you, Sister April, for putting that committee together, that group together. Is an excellent group. Is right on time. The panel, it was just awesome. I've been excited about it because I didn't think it was going to be like that. But we had some great.
Well, look who put it together.
Well, April Goddard put it together, and man, when she put stuff together, it just worked out. So,
I'm going to cut you off right there because I wasn't the only person helping with that. I have to thank Councilman Larry White, who was a part of the MLK committee, and we tag teamed it, although I could not be there because I was under the weather. But thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate that, and I couldn't think of 5 better individuals than the ones we had that day to actually do what you all did on yesterday.
And it was awesome. Everybody spoke their truth.
Yeah.
What is going on. And it was uncovering for the community to understand this. It's important. Where I sit with South Carolina Commission Minority Affairs, we've been talking about this issue across the state. So in the Commission Minority Affairs, our job is to talk about research. We are been put together by the Black Caucus leadership in 1993 to talk about the disparities in the African American or the minority communities. So we have a research department that provide research, and we provide this research that we come up with to the state legislators. The governor get one, and the state legislators get this research when it talks about minority, poverty, economic development, housing. So this is what we have. This research is data from the census, and so we present this to our legislators. And so, in that data, it talks about the housing crisis.
Right.
Not only the housing crisis in South Carolina, but we talk about around the country. Yeah. So we have this data. What I was talking from is this is our data. This is our statistic data that we presented to our legislators, and the governor have this data right now. This is my Bible for my community when we talk about outreach, when we go into the faith communities. So there's so much in this this package, this book, that really, when it comes about housing, since that's one of the topics, I use this research to begin to speak from, because this is the data that we have, and this is the data that we presented to our state legislators. So yesterday, we were so excited to be on that panel to begin to talk about it, because it's passion. I don't know if you've been there. It was passion for me to be sitting on that panel, because it is a sound alarm in our community. And I think that right now, not that many people are talking about it, but I'm glad that we was able to speak about it, and we're going to talk more about what is coming up next. So thank you guys for having me here tonight. But I thank you for on yesterday, even our moderator, Hank, he was so awesome delivering and asking the questions.
Absolutely.
It just came out so right. Yeah. It was just right on time for where we are in the community and right where we are in the country. Even as I shared on yesterday, in LA, over 40,000 people are homeless, and these are working homeless too. So we got folks who are working and they're homeless because they cannot afford living in LA, right? But here in South Carolina, our data shows that over about 43,000 individuals are homeless here in South Carolina. So that's another issue that we have to face. And then when we talk about affordable houses, like I said yesterday, we have to take one bite at a time with this elephant. You talk about public housing, those who are living in our projects, Section 8. You heard the Housing Authority talked about that yesterday, where people who get these vouchers that we know for years, they can't even find to move up out of public housing. They can't even move out of public housing to affordable housing, which is the next step, or a home ownership housing with these vouchers, because the ownership, back in the day, people they would love to have these Section 8 vouchers, because you talk about $800 they get for the vouchers. Now they can't even get home ownership, because most owners now is not taking these vouchers. So we have a problem right there with our public housing. Second, we talk about affordable housing. Basically, in affordable houses, you talk about people who living in affordable houses based on your income. You're living in these affordable houses. And then we have workforce housing. Basically, those who we talk about it today, where you talk about workforce housing, that's the new buzzword now in cities around the country. Workforce housing, live, work, and play. We talk about police officers, firefighters. So most cities now are looking at, how do we have a workforce housing initiatives in our communities, where they will put down some funding for those developers to look at taking some of their properties and targeting it for workforce housing, or even first-time home ownership for the workforce housing. Then the fourth one that we deal with is home ownership. That's another one. When home ownership is the first-time home ownership programs, and talking about home ownership is the difference between my white counterparts and the minority communities. Most banks won't give us loans, right? Banks will look at the credit. Banks will look at spotted work history. Banks will look at loan loan to debt ratio. Can you sustain it? Income. So those are major issues that we're seeing. And then they're looking at redlining our community. So that's a whole lot of stuff we talk about in that one meeting yesterday. But we need to continue having this conversation and taking one bite at a time. So I'm excited to begin to have these type of conversations, not only here in Horry County, but around the state with different partners that we're working with.
Okay, Tim, I was in attendance this morning, and the gentleman, the architect Allen, he indicated that there was a workforce housing initiative. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I was listening. That was going on in Charlotte, I believe, and he's been awarded a contract to that. So tell me, or have you found out any statistics as to how Horry County, and I won't talk about the other counties in South Carolina, but how Horry County could go about in making sure that that a workforce housing initiative can begin?
Well, again, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Sean Kennedy, a good friend of mine, he have that access. What they're doing in Charlotte, basically, that's like I said again, around the country, a lot of cities are reaching out to developers and nonprofit organizations and coming together to really give up land. The city gives up the land, and then they give it to the developer and the nonprofit, and they develop it. So basically, you have some of these partnerships where you have a CHODO, which is a community housing development corporation, and you have a development company. That's what Mr. Kennedy was talking about this morning. And what happened is the city will give that entity the land to develop the workforce, because that's one of their initiatives. So when Mr. Kennedy is talking about that, they're giving him right now in Charlotte, right now, the land to develop under this workforce initiative. So what we're looking at here, even in the city of Myrtle Beach, and Myrtle Beach has a workforce, housing and the workforce initiative right now. They Habitat is the leading agency, and Jason was talking about that yesterday, how to try to bring everybody together. But Habitat is the leading agency to look at the workforce here in Myrtle Beach. And so what that will happen is it's identifying some land that the city of Myrtle Beach owns in certain areas that they designate, and then bringing the partnerships with Habitat and some developers to talk about developing the land. And some of that will be where they have some mixed use. Basically, that's what Jason was talking about too. Mixed use with the developer. You have minimum income, and then you have not LMI, low moderate income, but those workforce will be affordable and the workforce will be combined in this project. So basically, when you look at if the city gives up the land, give it to a nonprofit under their CHODO, if they are CHODO, Community Development Development Organization that is sanctioned by HUD, then that CHODO can go in and get funded from South Carolina home program. They get funding from South Carolina housing program, and then they could bring the developer in and the construction to build a project. And so that's what's happening here at Myrtle Beach. And that's going to be, hopefully, what Jason was saying too, it can be the model for Horry County.
Good, great. I needed you to elaborate on that. I wasn't sure that I could really bring it out like you did, because I was busy doing other things, taking photos and stuff like that. But do you think that the statistics that are in that book, was there anything? I know you said that that's your Bible, so to speak, but is there anything there that you would question?
Well, it's what our data shows, and that's why South Carolina HUD have reached out to South Carolina Commission on Minority Affairs and asking us to host these type of events around the state. And it talks about fair housing. And so we're in the process now to setting up some dates with South Carolina HUD. They're going to bring in, it's U.S. HUD as well. They're bringing a regional director to come to South Carolina because of this data that we put together, talk about the census, talk about, it's a crisis going on, but fair housing is the number one thing on the list right now with HUD. How do we address fair housing? We talked about it yesterday when it talks about rent stabilization. That's major issues. Redlining is a major issue. As we've seen today or yesterday, the Justice Department right now in LA, the National Bank, they secured $31 million to almost $75 million because of redlining. So those are issues. If they having that issue in LA, we're having those issues in South Carolina. So those are issues, but I think it's important for us, like I said on yesterday, is as a community, as an African-American community or minority communities, is need to begin to have these conversations within our communities and our churches and look at how do we build a development coalition to talk about these issues. If it's in Conway, if it's in Myrtle Beach, if it's in Lois or Little River, North Myrtle Beach, because guess what, guys? Gentrification is happening in our community. And if we don't prepare ourselves, I'm telling you where we're going to be at in the next 5 years. We're going to see ourselves out of our community. I give you an example. On yesterday, we was talking about properties being sold in our community now, right? In the hood for $400,000 and some $1,000. If that property be sold for $400,000 and some $1,000 in my neighborhood, guess what's going to happen? My tax is going to go up.
That's right.
And it's going to base on the last house that was sold in that neighborhood. Right. So you think Horry County is going to assess that last house and they're going to base your taxes on the last house that was sold. So then those who have a house over here for $85,000 or $100,000, guess what? Their tax is going to go up, and they cannot afford $1,000 taxes. So then we're going to see a lot of people losing their homes for foreclosure. And then what we're seeing now that's going on in our community is that the developers coming into our communities and they're going to buy up our properties, and then they're going to sell it. They're going to renovate it, and then they're going to put it on market rate. So you're going to have a house next to you where some other folks who don't look like you living in your community, and they're paying market rate now, which your house you might be paying like $500 a month. They're paying $1,200 a month just to rent there. So those are issues that we're going to see happening in our community. And guys, I have seen this around the country and other cities, that when you talk about gentrification, I have seen this happen in our communities because we have not sounded the alarm for 16 years talking about housing, and look where we at now as a community. And guys, if we don't come together and have these hard conversations, we're going to see our community in the next 5 years, gentrification all the way.
Well, so the bottom line is we need another panel discussion like we had yesterday. Quick.
More, yes.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you while we're on air on the broadcast that, you know, if you can join in an effort or form a coalition, if you haven't done already, to kind of repeat a panel like discussion that we had yesterday for the whole county. Okay.
Well, that's my job.
Yeah.
That's why we're going to be doing something soon. I'm going to be working with HUD because they asked us to come out into 46 counties around the state. And since I'm in Horry County,
Right.
I'm going to bring it to Horry County. And hopefully we'll get people out who was there yesterday. And plus, I want to see us birth this coalition. Just as I stated earlier, some counties and some cities, we got to identify who are the CDC, Community Development Corporations. How do we partner up with them because they got some dollars? Or how do we work with like a Habitat who is a CHODO, right? A CHODO, that's a community development organization. They just got got the stamp that they could be a CHODO for Horry County. So by being a CHODO, you can go in as a CHODO in these communities and begin to build a coalition, right? And you can work with the developers to look at identifying. And it's interesting that that the city representative talked about how they identify these communities, right? They have to identify those communities based on the city comprehensive plan. In the city's comprehensive plan, it targets certain communities, LMI communities, we call it low moderate income communities. So they target them, but they have to come up with a plan for each one of those communities. And in that plan is supposed to take some of the residents for those communities to be at the table. I don't know if y'all ever been in one of those community comprehensive plan, but I've been in one here in Myrtle Beach when the BTW community, or really in the whole 5 LMI communities that we had. I know about those comprehensive plans. So then that's for the next 10 to 20 years. That's the comprehensive plan that the city has to present to the federal government to get money. So those are issues that we need to be at the table talking to our city leadership, our city councils, saying we want to be at the table when y'all look at the comprehensive plan, because in the comprehensive plan, we want to talk about economic development.
Right.
And in that economic development, that's their Bible. That's the way they have to look at it and how it's going to affect our communities.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's well taken. Can I, you mentioned that 43,000 South Carolinians were homeless. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, do you have any idea of how many were they were working homeless?
And that's what we're looking at right now, because we talk about that's another initiative, right? So the working homeless, that's what you're seeing in LA, you're seeing some here, and we're going back into that. Some people cannot afford they housing, so they're living with some of their family members. When you go in and did the census tract, that was the major issue, that some people they wasn't reporting that they was homeless, but they was living with some of their family members. So, and they was working, some of them still working. We have folks here who's working and living in the hotels, you know, and they're basically living in a hotel now because of the winter, but in the summertime, they're not going to be able to afford living in some of these hotels here. So that's an issue. And yes, we have to begin to look at, especially here in Horry County, we know that, especially in Myrtle Beach, that we have a homeless population issues. And I tell you what, the data says like 44% are males or African-American, males, and to their counterparts, maybe be 40-some%. But that's the data. The data is showing that. So how do we go in and we talk about the prevention and the intervention here in South Carolina, addressing the issues? Most cities doesn't even address the issue with homelessness. They have Myrtle Beach is maybe the only one that welcome everybody. They call it the welcome center, right? For homeless here in Myrtle Beach. Why? Because when most people are looking for services in other cities around the state, they say, hey, you go to Myrtle Beach and they got services there. We have a community kitchen. We have New Direction. So people who are homeless or people who are dealing with mental health, remember when they had the institution in Columbia, when they got rid of that institution in Columbia, they was giving people one-way ticket. People who had dealt with mental illness, they were sending them here to Myrtle Beach. So those people are on our streets, and we have services. I was a part of a coalition in the HMI system. In the HMI system about 10 years ago, it was a homeless coalition. We was going in the woods, counting the homelessness, trying to track them. And still today, 10 years later, we still can't track the homeless because they're not in the system. We don't have homeless shelters like other cities. We have homeless shelters, but we have people sleeping in the woods, and we have people sleeping in their cars, and they're not reporting that they're homeless. So that's another issue that we're talking about: the working homeless and the other homeless that dealing with mental health.
You know, something came to mind a few minutes ago that maybe you could shed a whole light on it, trying to explain it to the authorities, whatever. If you did video of just about all the people you were tracking to show what these homeless are doing and where they are staying and stuff like that, and then you had the opportunity to really show it to them in a forum or something. You know, I know they'll take a while to have a documentary like that, but that could be raw video. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and that could be worth, millions in quality.
Well, you can show the video, and they see it. They know that we have this problem. Until we begin to think outside the box and say we got to address this issue with the homeless. We got to put money into that. We got to build communities. We got to build housing. We only have one, maybe two centers here in Myrtle Beach. New Direction deal with, they're the only one that deals with housing. They got a homeless male shelter and a family shelter. So that's the only one that I know here in Myrtle Beach. I don't know, maybe in Conway they might have one, but we need more. We need, I'm gonna give you an example. In New York City, I was involved with the homeless task force under Mayor Giuliani. Giuliani came up with a New York City homeless task force. If anybody know, back in those days, that in the homeless in the 90s, they would be at Grand Central Station in New York. So what they did was they used these military armories, and they started taking people in these armories. And we had 900 beds. We had another one in all 5 boroughs had these shelters. And then what they did when they got there, they dealt with mental health. They dealt with all types of issues that these homeless people had. And then you find out families was having problems because of rent stabilization was out the door. So a lot of folks would wind up finding themselves homeless. So they started using bandit schools, and they renovated these bandit schools to put families in. So we have to begin to look at here in South Carolina, definitely here in Horry County, we have to address these issues of homelessness. And then we have to address these other issues, again, that we have, what I talked about yesterday. We talk about public housing, we talk about affordable houses, workforce housing, and home ownership. Those are major issues that's facing our community as a minority community.
Man, I'm going to keep saying this probably throughout our broadcast. We need to have this panel, this discussion again. I mean, I'm so glad that that you're here to kind of bring out these statistics and all the experiences that you've had in dealing with the homeless, because this is a serious issue. Okay, yes, sometimes all you got to do is drive through some of these. Not just the neighborhoods, but just drive around sometime. And if you have any heart at all, you stop and think and say, hey, what can we do about this? And even though Horry County is the fastest growing county in South Carolina,
it's the fastest growing county in the country.
Yeah.
It's the fastest growing county in the country. So that's showing you that people are coming here for a reason.
Right.
But we don't have the services that is needed for those residents who are living here. So you're going to find a lot of our residents leaving. The statistics shows that too. From kids from 44 and under, most of them are leaving. Those who are being successful, they can't find work. So those are major issues. So people are leaving, and then we're dealing with those who are living here. They can't afford to live here.
I wanted to get to that topic. I really did. Wanted to get to that topic because I can't even. I can't imagine, but I can't begin to start about how to resolve that issue. Okay, because this is a tourist economy.
Yes.
Okay, and you have people graduating with high technical degrees and stuff like that, and and that within itself presents the dilemma. You know, that kind of base of employment. It may be here, but it's not widespread enough to absorb all of the talent that's out there. And other majors of curriculum for graduates from the Coastal Carolina, for example. So, but that's another topic, I believe. Another topic. April, you can chime in. You want to chime in?
Yeah, I was just listening to everything that Tim was saying, and some of the points that he makes. Of course, as Hank Singleton, who was the moderator of the panel yesterday, pointed out that you really can't talk about the housing crisis without talking about economics, and you definitely were, touching on that. And so while you all were speaking, I, decided to just Google a little bit of information, and this is why the U.S. Census is so important, because capturing that census information to find out what household data looks like, and who's making what, and who's how many people are in a household, if they even have any sustainable work, or whatever the census is trying to capture. It helps us to understand what needs to be done in communities. And when we miss out on providing that data through the census, we miss out on certain funding and resources that could help alleviate some of the problems that we're having. But I don't know if people realize, and Carolyn Hickman, there you go, Carolyn Hickman Williams says it. She says the data is based on the census. So how can we make sure our communities are counted accurately? The only way we can make sure that our communities are counted accurately is to actually have a concerted, orchestrated, organized effort to ensure that our people are allowing census takers to come in, or they're taking the census. I know the census, unfortunately, in the past year or two happened during COVID. And so, there was definitely a issue there, because there were people who, if you think about older generations, they're not technologically savvy. And so,
Right.
it was really simple to go on a computer and put in the census data, and it did not even take that long. But if you have an older person or elderly person who does not know how to use a computer, then they're probably missing out on that. Having census takers come to the homes was seen as not so much the safe option. And then some people just decided they weren't going to participate because I don't know that they really understood, or, really understand the importance and the critical nature of the census data. But, maybe that's something as a part of your faith-based initiatives, Tim. We can figure out how to concentrate on in our communities, creating some type of, census workshops, or when it's time to collect the census data, which of course it won't be for several years now, but when it's time to collect that data, having something that is organized and that is kind of hosted through the churches in an electronic format. We have too many talented individuals, young individuals who understand, or, even, I won't just say young individuals, but individuals who don't mind getting on a computer and helping people to navigate how to get around on the computer, to not get, be able to capture this information. So, that's one thing. But when it comes down to, things like median household income, median individual income, something I want to share with the audience that's based on information I just found online. The median income in Horry County, this is for an individual, is $26,499.
Mm-hmm.
You can make $26,000 working at McDonald's, or some fast food restaurant, or what have you. $26,000 does not sustain a household. The median household income is $51,570, and we have to remember, this is income gross. This is not what people are taking home. And so when you think about, the fact that taxes, other expenses, and everything really cuts into their ability to have discretionary income, it's a wonder that we do have a housing crisis in terms of people being able to, fund home ownership or being able to qualify. Because if they don't have enough discretionary income and they can't keep their bills up, or they're not making enough income to have discretionary income and take care of their bills, more than likely then their credit suffers. And it's a domino effect when it comes to a lot of things. So there's a lack of I think there's a need for a lot of things in the community. There's a need for a level of education as to what that domino effect is all about. I think there's a need for education to understand what things like redlining. I don't know that a lot of people understand what redlining is. And Tim, I was going to ask you to explain that a little bit as far as what redlining in communities is all about. But it's just a matter of education. And when there are forums that are put together, like the one yesterday for the Conway Horry County MLK Day program, where we had Habitat for Humanity, we had the city of Conway, so one of the city managers was there. We had the Housing Authority of Conway, and then we also had the South Carolina Commission for Minority Affairs. We're talking 4 agencies that are playing very critical roles in this entire scheme of housing discussion. And the discussions need to continue, yes, but I think there's still a lot that people need to understand. There's a lot of myths that need to be debunked. There's a lot of misinformation out there or whatever. And so when it comes down to misinformation, that feeds into people's fears and anxieties about the future and what's going to happen in their communities. And for example, there's a couple of comments, like, for example, Janet Thompson, she mentions, 5 new homes being built around 9th Avenue, Race Path, Blount Street, Horry Street. All of this is in Conway. This is development that is happening that hasn't been seen in 30, 40, or 50 years. Mm-hmm. And in talking to a realtor about the implications for that kind of development, one thing that was said was, it's the kind of thing where you want development to happen in your community because you really don't want your community to be stagnant. However, understanding what the impact is on the community is the part that I think is missing in all of this, because all we're doing is opening our doors or our windows and looking out and we see, oh, a new house has popped up, but we don't understand where that home came from and why it's here, and also what impact it's going to have on my property or, anybody's property who, has lived in a particular area for 30, 40, or 50 years. And just like you said, Tim, persons moving into the community do not look like me anymore. Communities are becoming more diverse, and you have Northerners who are moving down south because it's they're finding that they can come down here and purchase property for prices that for them are very attractive, and for us we think are high, for them not so much. So there's so much inside of this discussion about the housing crisis. I for one am wondering when it's all going to just kind of come to a head, because even though we see a lot of housing starts, we see homes and apartments complexes being developed and all that, it doesn't necessarily mean that the persons coming into our area can afford any of it. It doesn't mean that the people who currently live in the area can afford any of it. So, one question that Janet also had was about, for example, small homes in Conway being built. Are they being built by HUD or private investors? I think that's one thing that people want to understand too. Is like, who's building these homes? And, if it is a private contractor, back to what Tim was saying about rent stabilization, are there laws to protect people, or when it comes down to rent, what happens with astronomical mortgages when it comes down to trying to get bank loans and things like that? So, in just a short while, I believe that there's going to be so much that's happening surrounding the housing crisis that it's going to become just almost too large for us to reel back in. So, Tim, I know that you mentioned HUD and some of the initiatives, and we've invited you to come back later on to talk about some things that are coming down the pipe as far as, things that you're going to be doing with HUD. But what would be your first piece of advice to people in these communities as far as what they need to observe and understand about what's happening in their communities? What would you say?
Well, I go back to any city have to put together the economic development plan for that city. They have to, and that's public information. I think that the community needs to build a coalition. And in that coalition, they begin to look at these areas that are being developed in their communities, putting that together. But looking at the economic development, you remember what the city council, the city leadership says that they identify these areas. And the developer comes in and say, I want to develop this part of Conway, right? And that developer put that plan together. The city cannot say that he can develop it unless somebody says it's not in my backyard. And that's how it happened before. But in our community, we don't gather together and say, not in my backyard. We don't go to the planning commissions. We don't go to the zoning boards. You know, those are areas that we need to look at. And looking at those planning commissions and saying to those planning commissions, you cannot build this in my backyard, and saying to those developers, if you're going to build it, then these are the stipulations that we have. We have these stipulations in place. Like in New York City, when they started building Brownsville, Brooklyn, some of those developers came in, and what they had to do in the stipulation, they had to put in rent stabilization. And then now they have, and it's interesting because they did some new development, and in that new development, they have a mixed use. Basically, you have people who are workforce, you have people who are affordable housing, and you have people in Section 8, you know, in those development. But that was because a coalition of people got together and said, if you're going to build in our communities, you're going to have to make sure that people live here, have the first opportunity. I remember we knocked down public housing in the early 90s. It was a HUD initiative. It was talking about Hope 6 project. Basically, they was going in, April, and to public housing in the projects, where it will have maybe, you talk about in the projects where they had 22 stories buildings, 22-story buildings, three buildings, and they had eight apartments on each floor, right? In most 8 of those apartments, you might have 4 or 5 families, you know, in those apartments. So HUD came down and said it was a Hope 6 project. They was knocking down public housing and building townhomes in these. So they had to get these people out, find them, replace them out of their community, and find them other places in other public housing throughout, or gave them vouchers to leave New York, leave Brownsville. And so they created this townhomes in those communities. And we fought for, if y'all going to build these townhomes in this community, you got to make sure people in these communities are going to be able to live in these townhomes. Now those same townhomes that I helped build, right, and if I was involved with that, are worth $500,000 in that neighborhood. But it was in that type of neighborhood. The same, and that's why I can share this story. I've seen this happen in these communities, gentrification. I see these problems, and it's coming here. And until we come together as a community, going to our representatives, our city council, understanding, being educated, as you say, what's going on. But that economic development plan that the city have to do with that comprehensive plan, the county have to look at a comprehensive plan, going to our those board meetings, those planning boards. That's why when you look at Horry County and some of those people who stood up and say we don't want that in our neighborhood, the county had to begin to look at how they deal with affordable houses, or how they develop it, how they bring some development. But it was based on some of those residents that doesn't look like me and you. Went to the county and said we don't want so much of these houses being built, and they stopped the development that was going on.
And I think as far as the community coming together, communities come together all the time to stop the building of, for example, big box retailers like Walmart and other places that they don't want near or in their communities. And so you're right. People, we do need to be more aware of what we can do. I think some people don't know what they can do to stop the ball from rolling, and to at least get the county officials, city officials, whoever, to just, hear them out. I think when we talk about the housing crisis, the one question that always seems to surface is, what is the crisis? A lot of people say the crisis is affordable housing, but then there's the question about, well, what is the definition of affordable? That's subjective. Then some people say, well, is it attainable housing? And we had kind of that discussion yesterday as well in the panel, and it was brought out in some of the pre-panel conversations that affordable and attainable are really kind of two ways to look at this. And so when we say affordable, you, Tim, may be able to afford, to purchase I'm going to say, I'm throwing a number out there, a $400,000 home, but that might not be affordable to me. Attainable is, where does the equity lie in our ability to do any of it, and to actually get access to homes, to apartments, things like that. And even the gentleman who was on the panel with the housing authority talked about the fact that, and this is something I didn't know, that potential tenants who are looking for a unit, a place to live in a housing authority, they also look at their credit. They look at credit, and he says, in his words, whether or not they have had any felonious activities and things like that. And so, when you think about government programs that are supposed to be in place to assist people, especially marginalized people or persons who are trying to get a second chance and start their lives over again, if they are going to someplace like a housing authority and they're being met with those barriers, then that's a part of the crisis, and it's so the housing crisis is bigger than money. It's bigger than, access to land. It's all of it. It's not just those those parts. It's really all of it. And it impacts a lot of different types of people. And so I don't think it's one thing that you can actually apply one remedy to. Jason Green with Habitat for Humanity, he was on the panel, and, I remember, and you've spoken about it too. He talked about the fact that there's, 3 different types of housing, talked about the workforce housing and other types of housing. And so, you might see more of the development for workforce in Myrtle Beach, more so than Conway. It's just a matter of time before that starts. So I wonder if the government agencies, any of our elected officials or any of these agencies that are responsible for housing are actually looking 10, 15, 20 years down the line to that growth pattern. And if there are any, plans to, I guess, kind of meet those things head on, because I think if we don't look at it now, it's almost like looking at it now is too late. We have to be looking 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line at what's to come. Right now, whatever we're doing, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And we kind of have to take it one piece at a time. But, do you have any insight as to whether or not, plans are being looked at that are like down the line? Is this what HUD is trying to do? They're trying to be proactive about the things that are to come, because it's not going to stop.
Yes, April. That's what we're having conversation. And Jason Green with Habitat is building this coalition, because he have something. Remember, he said about he have the data, and Brennan. He said something about bringing the developers and bringing everybody together. So he's gonna. That's his initiative right now. And me and him talked about it afterwards. I used to be on the Habitat board, and my job was to begin educating my community that Habitat is not a free house.
Right.
Y'all heard Jason say that yesterday. It's a
Not
mortgage. And some folks are getting Habitat houses as paying mortgage. They paying the mortgage, and it's not no $300, $400 mortgage.
Right.
And so Jason's job is to come bring that's his job on the end, is bringing those people together. Hopefully we'll work with Jason to look at that. But definitely HUD issue is fair housing initiative. How do we talk about fair housing? How do we bring these other partners in to talk about fair housing? And so bringing those same people back together with the housing authority, the city government, where we could come together with a coalition. I keep saying this coalition because that's what it's going to take, a coalition of like-minded people, people looking at this comprehensive plan, this economic development, where we're going to be at for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
For 16 years, we've been talking about affordable housing, we've been talking about homelessness and all that, and nobody has been paying attention for those many years. And that's why the issue that we have now. I remember when David Douglas built all these affordable houses here in Myrtle Beach. He built Swan's Gate. We're dealing with the senior citizens. He's a developer. We created Grand Scranton Housing here in Myrtle Beach, and on the Grand Scranton Housing is a Chodo. Basically, it was community, consists of like 31% of community people, and we was a Chodo that helped Mr. David Douglas come in to build these. We had issues with senior housing. We had issues with affordable houses. So we brought all those people together. And then at the time, Mr. David Douglas started looking at that. He started building all these affordable houses, Bay Point, Pipers Point. He got tax credit dollars from the government through this partnership. But because of that community initiative, this was a need. And they did that basically on their community comprehensive plan. So that was the plan that's saying in the next 10 years, we're going to need housing, we're going to need these things to serve our community. And so, yes, you're right, April. If we don't put this team together, this coalition together to talk about it, we're going to continue seeing these issues that we see today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is all good information, Tim, and thank you so much for being here and giving us a recap of yesterday and, letting us know what's coming down the what's on the horizon. We need to know that.
We'll be back. I'll be back talking to you guys once we bring HUD, because HUD, and I'm going to the office tomorrow, and I'm going to meet with my director, and we're going to be talking about when we're going to start this initiative with HUD. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to say to them that we have some folks in Horry County that y'all need to come to Horry County. They want to come to Horry County anyway.
Right. Yeah. And they should. This is the largest county in South Carolina, correct?
Yes, mm-hmm. Yes, the largest county. So I don't know whether we want to do it at a church or whether we do it at a school, but we need to begin to look at where we do this at. And let me just share this. And I said this yesterday. I'm over the faith-based initiative of South Carolina. My job is to work with churches and leaders. And you're right, April. When I started this job, the census was one of my jobs, of going out and reaching out to the community to try to get people and try to get churches to understand this is important with this census.
Right.
Because if we don't, look what happened. This data right now is saying we are in trouble. This data is saying that. And because they're using the census. Mm-hmm. So if the churches was in position to create in CDCs, community development corporations, the churches was in position of economic development companies, creating credit unions. If the church was in position to empower their people, then we'll be better off down the road. And we can't continue singing, "Come by here, Lord." We can't continue talking those same stuff. I'm sorry. We can't continue having those same conversations in our community. When you look in our churches are empty, but we don't want to address some of these issues. Even we don't want to address issues of our people being sick. We didn't talk to them about prevention and intervention with this COVID. We coming out of post-COVID, and we still have some people in our churches are sick and dealing with these issues. But the churches, I ain't heard one pastor. If you find one pastor got up and said, we're going to tackle health awareness in our community, because most of our people die, and this is data, pre-condition, illness, high blood pressure, all this stuff in our community, and we coming out of COVID, we eating the same way, we singing the same. So where we got that our community? We don't have credit unions, but we give $500 million. This is data, $500 million on Monday morning to a bank. But that same bank, when you ask me about Redline, that same bank won't give me a loan, and I'm a member of the church, to get a house. But that bank will give somebody else who don't look like me, who credit is just like mine, to get a loan. And they redline in our community. Basically, redline is where they look at your credit. They don't tell you that. They pull your credit. You ever go to the bank and they ask you all these information? Then they look up, they ask you for your zip code. So in that zip code, that's called redlining. And in that zip code, it says there's just whether you approve or you're not approved. It's interesting, right? Where we stand here in Myrtle Beach. You might live in the area, BTW community. Your house might go for $100 and some $1,000, but you cross that Ocean Boulevard, there's a house being sold for $1 million. That's redlining. That's what they redline our community. So we got to continue having this conversation, but not only just having this conversation, but I don't want to be back here 10 years later still having the conversation. You know, I want us to begin to look at this information. How do we develop this coalition? And what we need to do is put our fears aside. That's the number one issue in our community. We fear of what we don't know.
Right.
And we don't want to look like, oh, let me raise my hand. I don't know. Oh, I think I know. No, we fear that. So I know we got to wrap it up. I know, but I'm excited about this, excited about you guys coming on board and working with us. And I will definitely be back with HUD. I'll bring every state agency because we have MOU, memorandums of understanding, memorandums of agreement with different state agencies. So if somebody said they want USDA, we'll bring USDA to the table. We'll bring these agencies because this is the information that we need in our community. And I'm telling you guys, Horry County is the fastest growing. There's opportunities here, but we're missing out on the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great information.
Look forward to working with you guys.
Oh man, it's been awesome. These past 2 days, yesterday and then this morning, and now you're coming to give us a recap of all these issues on housing, and which is, like April says, a crisis.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and this crisis. So we thank you so much for coming and sharing that, and looking forward to you bringing HUD and everybody else you said that you want to bring. Hey, bring them on, man.
All right. And let me just share that panel that was on this morning with economic developers, those brothers, y'all need to get them on y'all show. And I work with you to get them on that show because those brothers come from a different perspective.
Right.
Those brothers are really doing it. Those are some of my good friends. I met some of them today, but my good friends and them are doing it. Brother Sean Kennedy doing some great things in Charlotte. Other brothers are doing some great things in others, Wilmington and Charleston. But we need to have those type of people, and then we need to build a coalition. That's what I'm saying. Even when we talk about economic development, and a young lady said today, 16% of minorities, right? She was saying 16% of minority businesses, but she didn't say this, that it's maybe less than 5% that are Black. I got the data.
Very real. That's very real.
5% is Black. Minority is considered 51%, 49%. So a Caucasian woman is considered as a minority. So that's 60% in that minority, but 5% is African American. And as I stated earlier this morning, out of that loan that we had $40 million, and I got the data, $40 million for the statewide with the PPP loans and different things like that, but 9.5% came to Horry County. And out of that 9.4%, it was 9.5%, $3 million came here, but only $300 and some $1,000 came to Black businesses. So there's an issue here, because why that happened, and even our organization was one of the organizations that the governor put together to make sure we get the information out there, helping agencies, helping nonprofits or businesses. Why? It was 9,000 applicants. Out of that 9,000 applicants, 2,400 received the award. 2,400 received the award, but most of them that looks like me and you, they didn't have accountants to help them fill out the forms. They didn't have banks. If you was connected to a bank, you walk in the bank was giving them loans. That's how they got these big companies got those loans, because they was banking with a bank. So you're a small business and you ain't had that. You ain't had your accountant. You wasn't getting approved.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was the discovery during that time that, unfortunately, a lot of Black business owners are not doing business the right way.
And we've seen that. Yeah. They're not doing this. Your mom and pop shop right here in Horry County. And I'm just going to say this.
Feel like it's not needed.
It's a need. And we talk about that today. $3.5 billion with the penny sales tax here in Horry County. That's capital gain. We have Horry County schools. You see all that construction. You see Horry Georgetown Tech construction and Coastal Carolina University. But we cannot identify, and if they out there, please call me. We cannot identify Black contractors that got awarded those contracts. Look like me and you. Well, there's an issue. That penny sales tax is coming around again. They just voted on it, right?
That's
So
right.
we voted
Yeah.
on it.
We need to
Yeah.
educate
They don't want that to go anywhere.
But we're not at the table. And then when we have meetings to try to educate our contractor, hey, there's some opportunities. We are mom and pops. We don't understand it. We joint ventures. Me and April work together. Instead of having that fear, we got the desire, but we got that judgment. And we got those things that we got to, those barriers that we got to overcome in our community.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to Tim, but you might need to talk to me because I know some people that you might need to know.
Yeah.
You know,
You might want to stop. You might want to stop by. Huh?
you might want me to stop by. You know, Tim can. If I don't know it, let me tell you something. I know somebody who know it.
That's right.
You know,
That's
so
right.
so
Well,
I'm
yeah.
glad so much that it's so much in me, so much around me that I see it. I want to share. I want to help. But you know, people perish because of what? Lack of knowledge.
That's right.
And our community is perishing because of lack of knowledge. And I want to share this. You know, while I breathe, I hope. And that's all I'm saying. While I breathe, I hope, preparing the minds for resource. We have to begin to prepare our minds for resources that are available to us. Other folks are benefiting. It's time for us to benefit as a community. And it's 2023.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Look,
You know.
man, we can't wait. I can't wait. I'm sure I can speak for April. Wait to have you on again. You're gonna bring those other fellas that you talked about.
I'm gonna bring the brothers. I'm gonna bring some folks.
All right.
You know? So they asked me to be if they asked me to be at the table, I'm gonna say, hey, y'all got to come and be with my folks.
And if you have the ability to secure availability for the gentleman who we're speaking today on the panel, please do so. I mean, and you can chime in with them.
Okay. I'll reach back out to them.
Right. That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Look,
it's been
man.
great. It's been good.
Look,
All right. Peace and blessings to you guys.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you
Tim,
so
and keep
much.
doing the good work.
All right. And you feel better. Okay, my sister?
All right. Thank you so much.
God bless.
All right.
All right, Brother Edward. Well, that's the last word. And just want to thank all of our viewers for tuning in tonight and being engaged in this conversation. Janet Thompson, Priscilla Fuller, Etta Green Carter, Carolyn Hickman Williams, Roderick Mishu, who actually had a broadcast earlier about his mobile gaming business. And it's fascinating, you know. And so thank you all for tuning in, and please share the word about this broadcast. You can share this broadcast because it is on Facebook. It's also on the WCMmagazine.net website. Just let everybody know they can go there to tune in. But Brother Edward, I'm sure we'll have more conversations like this to come.
Absolutely.
And,
we got to make sure of that.
I tell you, knowledge is power, and we certainly have been educated over the past 2 days now.
Yep.
About this very topic, and hopefully we can find some solutions. Just like someone said yesterday at the end of the program, we're talking about it. We're putting everything on the table. So then, what's next? What are the solutions? What do we need to do to combat this issue? So,
and we try our best to provide direction to solutions on our broadcast. If we can't give solutions, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, we hope that everyone has a safe week ahead. I recently viewed an article. Actually, it was this evening that talks about the fact that there are 23 cities, I believe, in South Carolina that now are kind of on COVID alert. So where the numbers are rising, and even Poignette McGill, she does a really good job of putting out COVID alerts, and she just recently put out a little live video earlier this evening about it. And so please be aware, COVID is still alive, and it's it's still making a lot of people very ill.
Right.
And there are different strains of it. And so, if you're going to be out and about and gathering and shopping and doing everything you're doing, be mindful, wear your masks, social distancing if you can, just whatever you can to make sure you're protecting yourself and your loved ones. And I just want to put that out there, Brother Edward. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially as we move into the spring, everybody's going to want to get out more and do more. And yeah.
Right. So April, who do we have next week?
Next week we have Marilyn Hemingway, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
She will be here to talk about everything that's going on, everything Gullah Geechee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And she's on the ball down there with that. So,
Yes.
we thank our audience again, and hope you all have a good remaining evening, and Godspeed. We'll see you next week, God willing. We'll see you next week. At the same time, 7 p.m. again. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your host Edward McQueen and April Garner.